Hello, I'm Richard Whiteley and welcome aboard. In the form of this video, we're going to take a trip together during which you will learn how to create extraordinary loyalty with your customers. So sit back and enjoy the trip. You know, if you were running an airlines and I were a passenger and put down this flip-down tray and I saw coffee stains on it, I would think that your engines aren't maintained. This is the kind of tip and idea we'll be sharing during this video. Well, we're on our way in this video, and I thought it would be appropriate to start with what our objectives are. And there are really three things we want to accomplish here. The first one is to understand the difference between companies that are really excelling in creating extraordinary value for their customers and companies that aren't. A second one is to identify specific strategies that these companies use to create loyalty that sets them apart from their competitors. And the third part will be to allow you to apply these strategies to your company. Now, in order to help you do this, we've included in the video materials specific guidelines on how you can use a self-assessment questionnaire. This questionnaire has 5 questions for each of 5 strategies which we're going to describe. And we encourage you to use this in your company so that you can take the concepts that we're presenting and translate them to your own unique situation. Now, these 5 strategies are as follows. The first one is how to create a laser beam focus, to really focus your company. The second is how to bring the customer alive in your company so that not only the people in the front end of your organization that deal with customers on a daily basis, but the people in the back end are able to appreciate what's important to the customers and have a feel for how they're reacting to the services and products they're getting from your organization. The third strategy is how to improve organizational teamwork. More and more today, an organization simply cannot succeed without having exceptional teamwork. The fourth strategy is how to create lasting customer enthusiasm. We've got to go beyond satisfaction now and create enthusiastic customers. And the fifth strategy is about contact leadership. The glue that holds it all together is the effectiveness of the leader. This is the key success factor. Now, it's important to understand where these 5 strategies come from. And they come from the research that we did in creating my last book, Customer-Centered Growth. And in creating that book, we talked to over 200 organizations in 6 different continents to discover what it was that made them successful. And we were able to derive from that research the 5 strategies that I just mentioned. So it's reasonable to ask, why is this important? Why should we even worry about these 5 strategies? Well, let me show you 2 charts that will answer that question. The first one has to do with not just having very satisfied customers, but having enthusiastic customers. And if you look at this chart, what you'll see is that on a scale of 1 to 5 on the bottom is the typical customer ratings when you send questionnaires to your customers. 5 being very satisfied, 1 being extremely dissatisfied. If you look at the left-hand vertical, you'll see that it's about loyalty. 100% means 100% of the customers you're doing business with are rebuying from you. What a wonderful situation that is. If you look in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see the word apostle. Those are customers who love you so much, they're going to actually help you go out and create new customers. And if you look at the lower left-hand corner where there's low loyalty, you'll see the word terrorist, and these are the customers who are wanting to get even, and they will consume the profitability of 5 apostles or 5 very happy customers. If you look at that line and see how it slopes, and you look at number 5 rating and number 4 rating, what you'll see is a dramatic drop in loyalty. If your customers simply move from a 5 to a 4 rating, their loyalty drops from 100 to below 40%. That's quite dramatic. Now the next chart will show you why it's all worth it. What will happen if you can get loyalty at 100%, and what will happen if you can get your customers to rate you at a 5 instead of a 4, 3, or 2, or 1? Fred Reichel did this research, and he looked at a number of different industries and companies in those industries, and the question he asked is, what would be the impact on profitability if you could just keep 5%, only 5% of your customers from leaving who would otherwise be leaving? If you could just retain that 5%. And the dramatic result, as you can see from this chart, is that it goes from 90% improvement on the bottom line to 25% improvement. Very dramatic results. So, getting customer enthusiasm is good business because it builds growth and it builds profitability. Well, now let's look at the first strategy, how to create a laser beam focus. As I mentioned, creating a laser beam focus, or focusing your organization, is very critical to take all of its assets and focus them on the critical success factors that will enable you to create customer loyalty. Andy Grove, the CEO of Intel, once said, "You have to understand what it is that you do better than anybody else and mercilessly focus your efforts on it." He was talking about focus, and that's why Intel is so successful. To help you focus, I'm going to present what is called the focusing framework. This framework will help you focus your assets on the critical accounts, the critical markets, the critical products that will have the greatest payoff for you. The way this grid will work is there are things that you do well and things that you do not do well as an organization, and it's very important to know what those are. And then there are things that your customers value and there are things that your customers do not value, and that's equally important to know. So, if you are not doing something well that your customers don't value, it's obvious you should stop doing it. But I'm amazed at how many companies today continue to do things they don't do well that customers don't value. Now, if there are things that you do well that customers do not value, then you also have to stop. It doesn't matter how well you do it. If it's not valued, it won't sell. So you either stop or retarget and refocus and find another customer group that would value it. If there are things that you do not do well that the customer does value, that's when you have to consider something like outsourcing or finding somebody who does do it well, partner with them, and present it to your customer. And of course, the last one is things that you do well that your customers value, then that's really your home. That's your home base. That's where your power and your profitability, and that is where you're going to generate your loyalty. Now, see if I can give you an example. Let's think of a company that doesn't do something well that customers don't value. And for this example, I would use a transportation company called Greyhound. Now, Greyhound is a company in the United States. It's a bus company. And they decided to improve their service by looking at the airlines, finding out what the airlines do that the bus transportation doesn't do, their competitors. And they said, what it is automated ticketing and reservation system. Well, what a great idea. And the people on Wall Street who were evaluating Greyhound, when they heard this, they thought it was terrific. The stock went up, but they only had two problems. One is they didn't do it very well. They ended up with a system that took 5 minutes to create a ticket, and of course the people who were the ticket agents started using the manual system again right away. It failed. And the other thing was that customers didn't value it. When they actually went out and talked to their customers, they found that the average customer who rides a bus in the United States earns $17,000 a year, does not have a credit card, and listen to this, does not make a reservation. This person just goes to the bus depot and waits for the bus. Notice that they did the customer research after they made the product innovation, and it cost them a lot of money. Think of a company now that does something well that customers don't value. The name Smith Corona comes up. Smith Corona makes typewriters. They make the best typewriters in the world. But I'll bet you people watching this videotape aren't using typewriters today. You're probably doing your work on computers. So in spite of the fact that they make the best typewriter in the world today, nobody is using it. Now, how about a company that doesn't do something well that customers value? That would be Nike. Now, what does Nike really do well? We all know that they are the great promoters. They have created that Nike swoosh and made it so famous, it's almost up there with Mickey Mouse and Coca-Cola as a brand identity. But what they don't do well is manufacture. And that's why they outsource all of their product development and product manufacturing. No Nike employee will be doing that manufacturing. Now that brings us to what you do well that companies do value, and I think a good example here would be McDonald's. McDonald's knows what their customers want and they give it to them, and they do it very well. So that's how the focusing framework would work. There's a four-step process for creating a laser beam focus. The first one is identify which customers you really want. Now this is very important. You cannot become a customer-centered organization. You cannot create customer delight unless and until you focus on the customers you want. And I'm amazed today at how many companies still argue over who the real customer is. The second one is identify what these customers, the ones you've targeted, really need. In other words, what's really important to them. Then discover, number three, discover your laser beam focus and focus in on those needs and requirements. Forget everything else. Focus on those needs and requirements. And number four, create an organization-wide, we say obsession, with this focus. In other words, communicate it to everybody in your company so they know how to focus in their jobs, and when everybody is focused, then the results that you're seeking will occur. You know, one of the questions that I get asked a lot is, how do I bring the voice of the customer in my company? I believe this customer stuff, but I can't get my people to believe it. And that takes us to the second strategy, which is how to bring the customer alive in your company. John McLaughlin, who is in service administration at Toyota, said, virtually everybody collects a lot of data. We could fill rooms with computer reports that nobody reads. And I found this to be true as I go around the world talking to audiences. I ask them, raise your hand if you receive reports you don't read or use. And at least 90% of the hands go up immediately. In other words, we're creating a lot of reports that we're not using, and very few of these reports have to do anything to do with the customer. Now we call this bringing the voice of the customer into the organization, hardwiring the voice. You see that building over there? In every one of those floors, in every one of those rooms, there's some kind of a sensor or indicator that would sound an alarm if there were a fire in that room. It would sense the difference in heat or the gases, and it would send alarm to a central box in that building, probably down in the lower part of that building. When that box in the central area of the building received the alarm, it would immediately call the fire department. In other words, nobody had to do anything. It was all automatic. We call that hardwiring. So it's a guaranteed system. All it has to do is that sensor go off and the fire department's on its way. Now, there's an alternative here, and the alternative is to buy one of those little portable battery-operated smoke detectors that you can put on your ceiling yourself. While these may be effective, there's two problems. First problem, they're battery-operated and the battery could go dead. Second problem, have you ever stopped to think that you have to be where the fire is so that you can call the fire department? That's not hardwired. There's a disconnect between the problem and getting the help. And that's what we see companies have been doing. In trying to bring the voice of the customer in, it's been disconnected from their own people. Now, there are 4 steps to hardwiring the voice of the customer, and the first one is create a listening strategy. Now, this is often a surprise to executives when I say create a listening strategy. Actually being thoughtful about how you are going to go out and get information from and listen to your customers. That's the listening strategy. The second is to collect, organize, and most importantly, display information. That becomes very important as well, particularly the display part. Think about putting charts of your customer satisfaction ratings all around your organization, putting it on your internal communications network so that everybody at every time